The Oklahoma Sooners make a front office splash.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. He's Jay Smith. I'm John Williams. The Oklahoma Sooners made a big-time splash in the offseason by hiring Jim Nagy, the former executive director of the Senior Bowl, to be their new general manager, Jay.
Yeah, John, I have been thinking about it, after your announcement yesterday, and I recorded something over on my channel, Unfair Sports, and as I thought more and more and really let it sink in, there's about three things that really jumped out to me on this hire. First and foremost, you just took a guy that is beyond overqualified for this job, and you brought him in to create something new that could potentially cause ripple effects throughout college football. Now, granted, other teams are doing this similar. Mike Lombardi is the GM over there at UNC. Washington just picked up a general manager kind of as a consultant to help Jed Fish. Nebraska just hired the New England Patriots executive, Pat Stewart. So you're seeing this trend happen everywhere. But the Jim Nagy one gets you to number two, John. He has the deepest Rolodex, I think, of anybody out there in college football. He's built so many relationships to get kids to the Reese's Senior Bowl that you've got a guy that agents know, coaches know, front offices know, NFL offices know. Everybody knows Jim Nagy, and he's built that repertoire. I think it's the last 5 years, he's had over 100 kids drafted in the NFL draft, and I think last season was 110 total. So, on a streak, he has been leading the way in not only scouting talent, but getting them to the NFL. So, having that deep of a Rolodex, John, I'm going to talk about that a little bit more later, but I think that may be probably the biggest thing that we're really overlooking about this hire.
It's a relationship business.
Yes.
As much as what have you done for me lately matters, also who you know matters. And so much of what you end up developing and recruiting and all of that is based and forged out of relationships. And Jim Nagy has done a great job. I remember when I was covering the Dallas Cowboys for Inside the Star, an independent Dallas Cowboys site, all the talk was about the growth of the Senior Bowl, dating back to when he took it over back in 2018. If you've heard the phrase, the draft starts in Mobile, that started with Jim Nagy. He really took the Senior Bowl from being what I think for most part was an afterthought to making it a premier event of the offseason that people wanted to take part in. I think back to, Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield was a part of the Senior Bowl. He was already projected to be the number one overall pick the year that he went into the NFL draft. But when he got to the Senior Bowl, he got an opportunity to work in front of the Cleveland Browns, to meet with the coaching staff, because I think they were the coaching staff for one of the teams that year. And it gave everybody kind of the assurance that who they thought Baker Mayfield was is who he is. And the Senior Bowl provided that. And you've seen a number of guys. You've seen great battles take place at the Senior Bowl over the years. And Jim Nagy has been a big, big part of its growth and its development. And just, again, providing opportunity for a lot of seniors who kind of flew under the radar at times because they get overshadowed by underclassmen because the NFL values the age part of this, that seniors sometimes kind of slide down the draft board. Well, the Senior Bowl gave seniors an opportunity to shine again against tough competition. I remember, you go back even further beyond Jim Nagy as the executive director, the battle between Zach Martin from Notre Dame and Aaron Donald of Pitt. Two future Hall of Famers going at it in one-on-one drills at the Senior Bowl. But he took it from, again, a all-star game that was pretty good and made it great. It was a premier event. You talked about the relationships, the years of experience scouting. I mean, 20 plus years as a scout in NFL offices. To me, this is a huge part of it too, because he's going to be able to take what Brent Venables wants, both for his defense and for his offense, what all these assistant coaches want. And he's going to be able to kind of help do that year-round scouting, where these guys might be trying to focus on developing their position group during spring ball, during fall camp, during the season. And Jim Nagy is going to be able to, him and his assistant GMs will be able to continue to do that scouting work for them and be like, hey, I got a guy that I think you're really, really going to like. And they're not having to parse through thousands and thousands and thousands of huddle highlight tapes to try and find that one kid that they want to prioritize.
Yep.
And you get somebody that can take the financial burden off of the coaching staff to try and manage the rev sharing and the NIL approach. And it gives somebody that kind of streamlines all that.
It does. And to even add to that, so his role, he's going to be mainly implementing a new progressive structure, getting college football to that NFL model. So he'll be working with, of course, Jake Rosenberg, who's the consultant, closely with Brent Venables, working closely. He'll build his own staff, assistant GMs, scouts, and all of that. But you made a point about the Cleveland Browns coaching staff being there, helping coach the Senior Bowl when Baker was there and kind of help with, getting him even more recognized and ending up being number one pick. John, he has an inside track on NFL coaches that maybe at some point will be looking for jobs. Think about it this way. If you see success, Texas is seeing it right now, your coaching staff will get poached. You will be losing coaches on a regular basis. And to be honest, I think that to me was a little bit more detrimental to Nick Saban at the end of his career than even like NIL and transfer portal, mainly because he was constantly replacing guys. The minute he lost Kirby Smart, he was constantly having to replace defensive guys as well. And it is very hard to find really good position group guys, even with the relationships he has. Nagy knows everybody. And everybody has his number. Everybody reaches out. Everyone talks to him. That gives you an additional piece of insight. If your coaches end up getting other jobs, you'll have the opportunity to be able to pick, because people will pick up the phone for Jim Nagy just because they know him so well and he's worked so closely with so many people. And then, of course, back to the agent piece. When it comes to looking at prospect and looking at players, they're working closely with the agents. He already knows what prospects make sense to go pursue. Just like you said, instead of wasting your time through tape, you have an idea and talking to some of these agents of, yeah, this kid, he's interested in that area, or no, I wouldn't waste your time. He can sniff a lot of that stuff out early and kind of streamline the recruiting and scouting process. So Nagy brings a lot of components that when you really dive into the context, or more so the nuance of what he's done, he really is going to change the game for Oklahoma. And it also provides Oklahoma with the one thing that a lot of people are trying to say, Oklahoma's kind of dead, not too good. 2 losing seasons the last 3 years, first time since 1999 or the 90s, actually. That eliminates the thought that Oklahoma could possibly be dead, because for Jim Nagy to interview for the New York Jets job, rumor has he interviewed for Florida as well. Mm-hmm. And he picked Oklahoma. Obviously, he doesn't think this place is dead, and obviously he believes that he can take this team and help propel them to the next level. That's a huge, huge endorsement for Oklahoma and that football program, and honestly, Brent Venables too.
And I think it's a guy that works in alignment with Brent Venables.
Yep.
Because it's a dude that, again, he values those upperclassmen. He values the experience that comes from being a senior and having played so many years. And we see that Brent Venables is able to get guys to stick around. Guys like Armies Thomas, who could have jumped to the NFL draft and probably been a top 50, top 75 pick, got him to stick around for one more year. So you got a guy that's going to have similar philosophies in player retention. And I think he's going to have similar philosophies in, position value as well, trying to identify what positions they need to focus their attention on when it comes to the NIL and rev sharing situation that's coming down the road. Big hire. If you're not sure about it, just log on to social media for a little bit, find your favorite NFL analyst, college football analyst, and they're praising the hire for Oklahoma.
Right there.
Yeah, it's everybody. High school, college, NFL, everybody loves Jim Nagy and loves this hire for the Oklahoma Sooners. That shouldn't scare you, but I know the pessimist out there is going to be like, oh man, if everybody loves it, it must be terrible. But no, this is going to be, I think it's going to be a good thing. Now, all Oklahoma has to do is put a team on the field that's going to go actually win some games. So will they win games? Well, the Oklahoman predicted every single game for the Oklahoma Sooners, and we'll discuss that coming up next here on Locked On Sooners. Attention, Locked On Sooners fans, the future of college sports is here, and it's transparent. Before the Roy app, NIL negotiations often happened under the table, and fans didn't have a clear way to directly support the athletes they love. Now with Roy, you get to be part of the change and support Oklahoma athletes in the most transparent way possible. Roy, the NIL app, allows you to choose the player you want to support, decide how much you want to contribute, and receive exclusive content from the athletes you back. The best part, if your player transfers, you get your money back. It's a risk-free way to show your support. The Roy app is giving fans control, no more uncertainty. Now you can provide transparent, impactful support and help shape the team and the future of college sports with your contributions. Download the Roy app now from the App Store and start backing Oklahoma athletes the way they deserve, with transparency, trust, and a real impact. This is the future of college sports. Join it now by downloading Roy and supporting your favorite players. Again, thanks for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Tune in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Jay, the Oklahoman dropped their early 2025 season prediction for the Oklahoma Sooners, and Joe Masato had OU going 8-4. What's your initial reaction to that?
Yeah, I went through to look at the games to see which one he said we were going to lose, and I've got so many questions about some of these choices. Like, I'm intrigued that he has Oklahoma starting the season off 5-0. So you start the season off 5-0, you head over to Red River, and then they think that they don't do well against Texas in Red River this time around. Texas has had a lot of changes there. So I don't understand why Oklahoma, with the returning production that Oklahoma has on both sides of the ball, like even less on defense than they did last year, while at the same time having majority of the players that played still there, Texas is revamping their entire offensive line. I give them past the OU game before I feel like that would be good. And they just did a refresh on coaches. Now, that could be a good thing for them. But that one to me was like, the score is probably what threw me off more at 34-19 in comparison to just the loss. And in the South Carolina game, I don't know, man. I don't know about South Carolina winning a game if Oklahoma doesn't turn the ball over a lot.
Yeah.
Like three plays in a row.
Yeah, you don't know what that game would have been otherwise. Like, who knows what it could have been? Could it have been as bad as it was? Sure, it could have been, but you never got a chance to find out because the game was over in the first 5 minutes of the game. With Texas, could they be better than Oklahoma? Yeah. Could they beat Oklahoma? Sure, it's a rivalry game. Sure. Are they 2 touchdowns better than Oklahoma right now? No, they're not. If you want to cut a line on it, it's probably somewhere between 3 and 5.5, and I think that's probably a reasonable place to put it. Again, it's a rivalry game. Oklahoma, revamped its offense, brought in a big-time quarterback prospect in John Mateer, and you're banking on Arch Manning being everything that everybody says he's going to be. You're banking on the second coming of quarterback Jesus. Like, this is what you're banking on.
Baker Mayfield.
And if he's not that, it could be underwhelming. Remember, Quinn Ewers was a 1.0000000 recruit and prospect as well. And everybody by the end of his career was pretty underwhelmed. And they were hoping that Steve Sarkisian would go to Arch Manning. So, listen, I'm not going to sit here and predict this game right now, but I'm going to sit here and tell you Texas is not a 15-point team. It's 15 points better than Oklahoma right now. South Carolina, man, who knows? That's just going to be a tough game because it's a tough road environment. And then you look at some of the other ones. They got Oklahoma beating Ole Miss in a narrow one, 24-23 at home. And then you go on the road and you play Tennessee, and they got Oklahoma winning that one, 35-31.
But then the Alabama game is what threw me off next, too. It's like, I would understand if Alabama had Jalen Milroe coming back, and I would totally be like, yeah, there's a good chance Bama gets that revenge.
Yep.
They do not have him coming back. They got Ty Simpson or Austin Mack, or freshman Keelan Russell is going to be the quarterback in that game. I'm not going to jump all over this and say that any of those three are going to be Oklahoma right now. Not today. I won't. I can't say it. If Jalen Milroe couldn't do it in Norman when Oklahoma was atrocious on offense, I cannot pick any of those dudes today at all. So, and with Oklahoma fixing so far, on paper, the one problem they had, which is going to be consistency at quarterback. No, I don't see that one turning out 28-20. I think it's going to be a tough game. Yeah. I'd say a heck of a lot closer than that. I don't even think Oklahoma gives up 30 points next season, if you want me to be 100% honest.
To me, it would be less surprising if they lost to Tennessee than if they lost to Alabama. Like, I'd be more surprised by them losing to Alabama, given, again, the turnover that they have at quarterback. Now, you listen to our guys, Luke Robinson and Jimmy Stein over at Locked On Bama, and they'll tell you that these guys are going to be better fits for what Kalen DeBoer wants to do on offense. Yet, they're going to be making their first swims through college football as a starter. And we know how that can go. It could go great, but it could also go really
bad.
Yeah. And there's everything in between. And if Oklahoma's defense is as good as we think it's going to be, which I think it's going to be really, really good, it's not going to be an easy game for Alabama's offense to try and get anything done. So, yeah, I mean, to me, I wouldn't, if I were going to predict these games right now, I might flip-flop those, have them lose in Neyland Stadium at Knoxville and maybe win in Tuscaloosa. I know that sounds crazy to think that Oklahoma might be able to go in, but it's not Nick Saban there anymore. It's not. It's Kellen DeBoer, and he's got a lot to prove. Yeah. Just kind of finishing this out, and then they have Joe Masato's got Oklahoma beating Mizzou, and then losing to LSU to close the season 8-4. We didn't really touch on it, but he hasn't beaten Michigan, which I think a lot of people look at that one and think, yeah, Oklahoma could absolutely win that game.
Yeah, I 100% agree there too. It's that Michigan game that's the one that I feel like is going to be the measuring stick for Oklahoma. And the best part is that it's early in the year. Again, this is another team that's got another quarterback situation that they're revamping. But Michigan has struggled at quarterback for years. Like, I mean, even with J.J. McCarthy being a 5-star that he was, they weren't that great at quarterback. It's always a team that's just run the ball, running down your throat, be super physical. And that's the way that we want to play too. Yep. So I don't think that that's something that really scares or concerns me. I like the thought of us pulling it out against Michigan. Taking down Missouri. The LSU game, though, is interesting. That score feels a lot higher than it should be at 41-28. Because this past season, we didn't have much of an offense, and the game was a lot closer until we gave up that special teams touchdown. Yep. And then it's like the whole offense forgot how to play again. We were going to go into the half with the lead, just like we did against Ole Miss. But Garrett Nussmeier should be able to prove himself this season that he deserves to be considered one of the top, if not the top quarterbacks in the SEC. So I don't think that that's too far-fetched to think that it's a 13-point game. While at the same time, I would like Oklahoma to get a little more respect on defense. Right. Especially with a competent offense. Yeah. Get a competent offense, we're not giving up 41. I would like someone to give Oklahoma just a little respect on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah. Oklahoma's not giving up 41. Eli Bowen's going to be a lot better than what he was at the end of that game against LSU this last season. You're going to have better cornerback play on the other side. Your pass rush is going to be better when you've got Armies Thomas and pick one, Marvin Jones Jr., Danny Okoye, Adepoju Adebaware, Taylor Wayne coming off the other side. You're going to be a little bit better, more consistent as a pass rush team. And you're getting year 2 Jaden Jackson. You're getting another year of Dominic Williams in the defense. You're getting another year of Kip Lewis in the defense. You're getting that safety group that, listen, Billy Bowman's great. I think it's still really, really good with Robert Spears Jennings and Peyton Bowen and Jaden Hardy and Reggie Powers III and Michael Boganowski. Like, it's still a really, really, really good unit. So if I was picking that game today, I'd probably pick LSU to win, but not because they're scoring 40 points, but because it's a close ball game and they're able to get, just a little bit more. They might be the team. If I was going to pick one team to score 30 on Oklahoma this year, they'd be the team. Definitively. I just don't know if they're going to run away from Oklahoma quite like that. Any final thoughts on this before we get out of here on that one?
Yeah, the Ole Miss one is intriguing because it's a 1-point game. And Ole Miss, like everybody else, lived in the transfer portal, had a bunch of turnover, lost a lot of defensive players going into the draft. Like a lot of these teams we playing against lost a lot of kids in the NFL draft. Yeah. And Gabe and Teddy talked about it over there at the Oklahoma Breakdown, that Oklahoma, we've got to do a better job of getting more guys at the spot where they can get drafted. Well, all these teams are losing those players. The question still is, will they be able to replace them immediately? And I don't know with the quarterback situations of most of these teams that's going to happen. So,
yeah, Ole Miss lost Jackson Dart. They lost a lot of talent on both sides of the ball.
That's 3 years starting, man.
Yeah, like Trey Harris is gone, Princely's gone, Walter Nolan's gone, Chris Paul's gone. It's like a group that should have been in the playoffs. It was really disappointing they didn't make the playoff. Our guy Stephen Willis at Locked On Ole Miss, he'd tell you it was the best roster in the SEC, and they disappointed.
Yep. So
they're going to be better or worse in 2025? Right. My guess is worse. Will OU be better, though? We check out FanDuel's win total for the Oklahoma Sooners for 2025 coming up next.
Life moves fast, especially when you have a family. One day you're watching your kids take their first steps, and before you know it, they're off to college. That's why securing their future is so important. Fabric by Gerber Life makes it simple to get term life insurance that fits your family's needs. With Fabric, you can apply for term life insurance online right from your couch. You can be covered within under 10 minutes. And in many cases, no health exam is required. So as a parent, you can make sure your family is financially protected no matter what happens. Fabric gets me that type of peace of mind. As well as Fabric also offers free digital wills and access to investment accounts to help you plan for your child's future. It's always good to give them a head start. So join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their families. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege. That's meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Assurance Company. Not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions.
Again, thanks for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. FanDuel dropped OU's win total for the 2025 season. Y'all let us know what you think. Over or under that win total for 2025 is sitting at 6.5.
Even more intriguing with that, John, it's at 6.5, and it's even money on both. So it kind of feels like Vegas is just throwing something out there to see what everybody jumps all over. Mm-hmm. That number's going to go up.
Yep.
Probably going to be closer to 7.5 because it's going to get hammered. Look, we just talked about the schedule a couple of minutes ago. And when you look at the schedule, dealing with a bunch of teams that are replacing their quarterbacks kind of helps put Oklahoma in a situation where they could pull some upsets. Granted, Oklahoma's bringing in a quarterback with a lot of experience compared to a lot of the others who are bringing in quarterbacks with minimal experience, or they've got guys that weren't all that great at their last stops. I mean, no shade to them, but at the same time, Auburn brought in 2 quarterbacks that were very questionable at their last location, and Austin Daniels as well as Jackson Arnold. So because of that, we've got to just wait and see if they can show everybody something. And for us, for Oklahoma, the good thing is that playing up against all these teams with young quarterbacks with a very experienced defense, it's going to be very beneficial going forward.
Yeah, Oklahoma replaces its quarterback, but I think everybody agrees it's an upgrade at the position. If you start 5-0, like Joe Masada of the Oklahoman projected and predicted, then you just need 2 more wins over your final 7 to get to the over on that 6.5. To me, that feels like a really easy overplay. We had a commenter on YouTube say Oklahoma would be lucky to get to 7 wins in 2025. And my response was, Oklahoma was really unlucky in 2024 with all of the injuries that they had, with all of the turmoil on offense that they had, with the inefficiency of the offense because of the offensive line injuries, the wide receiver injuries, the inexperience of the quarterback, the poor play calling by Seth Luttrell, the inability to get anything going outside of a tight end screen by Jon Finley. And they got to 6 wins. Like, that was as bad of an Oklahoma offense as we've ever had. I mean, you might be able to say ever. Like, maybe it's not as bad as those 90s offenses, but in the modern day of college football, where offense is really easy to come by pretty much everywhere, that you only averaged 13 points per game in SEC play when you take away the defensive touchdowns. Because remember, you got 3 of them. You got one against Auburn, one against Alabama, one against Missouri. That kind of inflates your SEC points per game total. You take those away, you only scored 13 points per game in conference play. They're going to be a lot better than that, Jay. And so you're going to tell me that they'll be lucky to get to 7 wins when they were super unlucky and they got to 6 against what I think is a tougher schedule last year than what it is going to be this year?
Even better, John, we get more home games this year.
Right.
Like, that's probably the bigger piece. Like, you get one road game where you go to Temple, who fired their coach, and they've seen a full refresh on the roster, and we blew them out last year. So you're traveling to Temple because you did that like 15 years ago when Matt Rule was the head coach there, and you set this up. So with that piece, you get unlucky throughout the year, and you still finish with 6 wins. All you got to do in this situation is be lucky and have a decent setup of offense as well as not so bad on injuries, and you're probably going to win 8 at least. Like the Oklahoman in last segment, we talked about it. They got Oklahoma winning 8 games. That's not out of the realm possibility, and it's not ridiculous.
To me, that's that's not quite the floor. I mean, I feel like it might be the floor, and
I think it's the floor.
Man, listen, I'll get my Kool-Aid out and I'll start chugging on it. You know, I got my sunshine pump over here. I'm filling up the tank over here on that. If y'all need some sunshine, I got it for you. Got it in droves. We got it piped coming from the backyard.
Yep.
8 wins is the floor, man. And this team needs to be contending for a playoff spot. Like, that's the expectation. I know last year sucked, but last year's last year. This year is this year. It's a new year. Not everything's going to translate one year to the next. And listen, I got to see them go prove it on the field before I'm going to believe that they can actually do it. But based on what I see, 8 wins is not out of the question. And being in contention when you get to that final stretch of games in the month of November, that's where you got to be. You got to be 1 loss or fewer entering the month of November when you play Tennessee, Alabama, Missouri, and LSU. And if you get to that point of the season and you only have 1 loss, then I think you got a chance. If you got 2 losses, you probably aren't going to make the playoff. But I mean, 8 wins should be right about where they land. And I think a lot of people, when it comes to the fall predictions, are going to be putting them at 9 wins, 10 wins.
Yeah, the fall predictions are really going to change, especially as you get to the spring, you get to this last spring portal, because there's a good chance Oklahoma could pick up Oklahoma could pick up something here in the spring portal to kind of help with even more production. There could be some players that decide they want to go ahead and come to Oklahoma, and there's a good chance that Oklahoma could make some adjustments there. But when I look at some other teams in the SEC, like Missouri, they're 7.5, and they're under 7.5 is a favorite at -122. So Vegas is not very high on them, even with them replacing their quarterback. They're like, nah, I don't know about that. Mississippi State's at 3.5 right now. That's pretty interesting. LSU at 8.5 wins, and that one is a fave. You got Texas sitting here at over 9.5 wins at -200. So it's a heavy favorite to do that. Even them coming with the returning production in the hundreds in college football, they think that all the backups are ready to play, and they'll be playing a lot of freshmen. To me, I say Texas is going to be a lot better in 26 than 25. I don't know how 25 is going to mesh for them yet. But Bama's also sitting at 8.5 games, which is a lot more than I expected. Arkansas 55.5, Auburn 7.5. Auburn's at 7.5, guys. Y'all trust Hugh Freeze like that? I don't know if I can trust Hugh Freeze like that.
I don't trust Hugh Freeze like that. There's not an SEC team that I look at and I'm like, yep, definitively they are a really, really good football team. Because even though I like LSU and I like their offense and what they're going to be able to do this year, I still don't know where that defense is going to be. Is it going to be ready to go? Do they have that thing cooking? Because if they do, then they're a legit contender. If they don't, then it's going to be a lot of shootouts, and a lot's going to be put on Garrett Nussmeier to win them football games. But you go down the list of teams in the SEC, and I don't think you can say definitively, like, I feel great about that team.
Right.
I mean, everybody points to Georgia. You go look at Locked On SEC, and he was with Spencer McLaughlin on Locked On College Football this week, and he asked Chris Gordy of Locked On SEC, okay, which SEC team do you think is most likely to get back into the national title game? And he pointed to Georgia. And that's really only because of recent history where they won back-to-back national titles and then got left out of the playoff last year when many people thought that they actually, I say last year, but back in 2023, when many people thought they should have been in as one of the top 4 teams. And so he picks them, but still they've got quarterback question marks. They've got offensive line question marks that they've got to solve. When Carson Beck left for Miami, or when he left due to injury and then left for Miami, but when he came out of the game, the offense did not look good. It looked bad. So there's a lot to prove for the Georgia Bulldogs at this point. Now, do you feel great about the coaching situation? Absolutely. You love Kirby Smart, and everybody does, and you think that they're going to be really, really good once again. At the same time, this Georgia team isn't the Georgia team from 2-3 years ago.
Nope.
So there's not an SEC team that doesn't have huge question marks, in my opinion.
I 100% agree with you there. Everybody, for the most part, has a lot of questions. And I think that that's the thing that I'm taking consideration in any of these conversations, because I still have questions about Oklahoma too. That's the good thing, is there's questions here. Just need to see health at wide receiver. We've got 7 new. We need to see health at wide receiver. We need to see health on the offensive line. And then we need to see John Mateer repeat what he did last year at Washington State. If I can see those 3 coming to fruition, I'm good, because the defense is most likely going to be just as stout as it was the year before. And we added we added the better defenders on 2 teams that were really brutal. We were able to add those in Marvin Jones Jr. as well as Kendall Daniels. And so you get Dobie back, you get Gentry Williams back, and they're healthy enough. Those were the 2 bright spots on the defense 2 years ago. Probably the brightest, the way that they were playing. Then you add back to it. So, to me, with all the questions for everybody else, I just don't understand why Oklahoma doesn't get a little bit more respect, especially with the way the defense played last year.
Yep. So if you're in a state where FanDuel is available, now's the time to hit that over on the 6.5 if you're feeling confident about the Oklahoma Sooners, because that 6.5 isn't going to last very, very long. So go to FanDuel.com and make every moment more. And that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thanks so much for tuning in, being a part of the show. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. So hit that subscribe button and that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. Follow Jay at Unfair Sports. Go check out his channel, Unfair Sports, over on YouTube. You can follow me at John9Williams and read my work covering the Sooners over at SoonersWire.com. The show is at Locked On Sooners on all of your favorite social media platforms. But until next time, he's Jay Smith. I'm John Williams. Boomer Sooner.